you. Hi, good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Faye. We've had very worrying news come in from Kashmir, and it's very distressing. But let me just take you through those of you who don't know what's happened in Kashmir so far. There have been specific attacks which have targeted civilians, civilians from minority religions, civilians from other states. 11 civilians have been shot dead in Kashmir in the last 1 month. It's led to an exodus of migrant workers who are now forced to flee the state out of fear. On Saturday, last weekend, 2 laborers, one from Uttar Pradesh, one from Bihar, were killed by militants. This comes after there were 2 laborers also shot on Sunday. Besides that, 2 teachers, a principal and a school teacher, a pharmacy owner, a taxi driver, a street food vendor. The police have launched a massive crackdown, from what we understand, and detained 900 people across the Union territory, and with alleged links to separatists. There have been several political leaders who have also responded right now, but there is a need to take a pause here and understand what is going on in Kashmir at this point. Joining me right now is noted journalist Anuradha Bhasin, who is the executive editor of Kashmir Times. Ms. Bhasin, good evening, and thank you for giving me your time, and thank you for giving my audience your time. Would you be able to give us an understanding of why this is happening and what is happening in Kashmir right now, and the organization that has taken responsibility? Have they said why they're doing this?
It's difficult to actually summarize the whole thing, and we are all trying to make some sense of what is really happening. Yes, there are different theories that are going on. There are 2 organizations that have actually claimed responsibility. There is one, the resistance force, which the police say is a front of the Lashkar-e-Toiba and the Hizbul Mujahideen, and it has been working in Kashmir. It has been present for the last 1 year. And there is another one unknown name called the Gilani Force. And they have criticized the TRF and said that they are wrongly claiming it and that we are responsible. So there's also actually some kind of competitiveness there to own up the killings, and they've blamed the TRF of working at the behest of Pakistan. So we really don't know how authentic these statements are. These are kind of faceless organizations, and how much weight do we put behind this? But I would say, one thing that seems very clear from the kind of feedback that you get from various people, and from the sequence of events that have been going on in the valley for many, many years, and particularly in the last 2 years, post August 5th, 2019, that there has been acute repression of the general population. To the point that, first you have a communication blockade, you have excessive militarization, there is a tendency by the state's administration to ensure that all democratic spaces are shut. There is no dissenting voice. And the media is not speaking. The political space is completely, there's a complete vacuum there. And other than that, you have the administration is trying its best to intimidate people who continue to speak even very little. Even a minor word could be taken as criticism of the state. And there are also certain policies and laws to bring people in line. For instance, for the media, there is a media policy. There are journalists who have been summoned and intimidated, and cases slapped against them. Similarly, the common masses. And once the media is tamed, nothing really is being said about what is happening on the ground, about what the people really are facing, the public is facing. And you have these land laws, which are giving a sense of disempowerment, disenfranchisement, to the local public. Not only in Kashmir, across Jammu and Kashmir, there are fears that there would be a demographic influx, there would be businessmen coming and monopolizing control over economy, and these kind of fears have been going on. And this is much more in Kashmir Valley, where there is a threat perception of a demographic change. And recent laws, which are aimed at dispossessing people from their land in various ways. Other than that, you have had the Migrant Property Act put into action. I mean, of course, the act has been there, but new notifications whereby the Kashmiri Pandit migrants are being encouraged to en masse register their grievances. And even though officers themselves are saying that 90% of these complaints are false, there is a random speed with which, initially they executed they implemented this notification, taking away, which empowers the district administration to take away the land that is in possession of the Muslims. And there may be n number of reasons why they're having it. They may have bought it, they may have the power of attorney, or they may have been giving it to, yes.
Forgive me, do you see this then as retaliation for...
It seems like, I mean, that seems to be a logical conclusion, that there has been so much repression in the valley, there has been so much of sense of disempowerment, and there is no space for speaking out, there is no political space. So the only articulation that would happen in this kind of an atmosphere would be a violent one, would be an irrational one. That would have been the logical fallout of this, and which is something that many of us had been warning about since the last 2 years.
Why do you think that the migrant workers are being made targets?
I think they're vulnerable, they are sitting ducks, and there are also fears that, there's going to be a demographic influx here in Jammu and Kashmir, and people feel that they are the ones who might settle here. There have been migrant workers have been coming to Jammu and Kashmir to work, and according to 2011 census, there are about 28 lakh migrant working force in Jammu and Kashmir. And some of this has been floating, but many of them have been living here for the last 40 years. And because there are good wages, the wages were much better than anywhere else in the country. There was free education here. And then there was good work. And post 2019, more and more migrants have been coming up. So that plays up on the psychology of the people, and they feel that probably these are different theories that, you keep talking to people, and this is the feedback that you get, that there are fears that, they're the ones who are going to settle first. The other thing I feel is that they're also, vulnerable targets, because you cannot possibly protect them. And they're poor people. They do not have proper homes. They're living in slums. They're living in clusters. They're scattered all over. And it's very easy to target them.
The targeting of the Kashmiri Pandit population, especially people like Makanlal Bindu, for example, who is a key member, noted member of the population, the Kashmiri Pandit community, we understand, in Srinagar. Was that, would you say, an extension of the messaging from the 1990s, saying you are not safe here, please move out? And is that...
No, I don't think it's an extension of 1990, because if it was an extension of 1990, there were not all Pandits migrated. There were some who migrated in 90, then 91, 92, there were different exoduses. And thereafter, whoever left were left because they were facing a huge economic crux. But ultimately, 808 families had been staying, they stayed put, and they were living, and they continue to live even as of today. And they are under a lot of threat at the moment. If it was continuing, of course, there were 1 or 2 massacres that happened of Kashmiri Pandits, the Nadimar one in 2003, which was the last one, and before that, Sangarama, Vandhama, sorry. And but apart from these 2 incidents, there weren't any other. And if you talk to the migrant, these non-Pandit, activists, their take is that many of the migrations that happened later happened because of economic reasons. There were people who felt vulnerable in the villages, and they had shifted they were displaced from the villages to the towns, but within Kashmir Valley. And, these are rural people who are connected with agrarian economy. So they lost their source of revenue and income, and they were impacted economically, and which is why they might have migrated, not because of threat. For 30 years, they've lived here. They've faced a bit of threat, but so has the local population. And the sense of vulnerability of minorities, of course, is much more. In the last, since 2005, when the Prime Minister, relief and rehabilitation package was introduced, some families, 4,000 people returned, including, some migrant employees and some families, a total of 4,000 till between 2005 and 2017. And these people have been living in the valley without being threatened. They came back to work. They were working. Some of them were living in these clustered that were safe clusters, but they were going out to their places of work. And many of them have said that in the last 10 to 15 years, or 5 to 6 years, some of them, that they had been working in the valley, they did not face any threat from the society or from anybody. Nobody, intimidated them. Of course, there were other problems of living. There were problems of economic, accommodation, logistics. And at every step, some of them have been saying that their colleagues, Muslim colleagues, helped them, or their, Muslim neighbors helped them, whoever, some of them were living in their own homes. So I don't see it as a continuation of 1990. But today, what has happened is post 2019, there is a tendency amongst the Muslims who feel that the Indian state is treating them as an enemy, and the lines, even by larger Indian population, they view them as, somebody who cannot be trusted. They feel that within India, the lines between a Muslim, particularly a Kashmiri Muslim, terrorism, and Pakistan are being blurred. So as a reaction to that, they tend to see every Hindu as a face of the Indian state and the Hindutva state particularly. They are watching, they are observing what is happening even in India today, and that is an important link.
I just want to read out a recent news story that came out which I'm sure you're familiar with. The fact that a memorandum of understanding has been signed by Dubai, which is part of the UAE, in order to do construction and development of infrastructure in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, this is from the NDTV story. It says, Memorandum of Understanding by Dubai is the first investment agreement by a foreign government in the region. Now, what is the kind of reaction coming from the people of the state towards announcements of development, towards announcements of construction of infrastructure, the opening of roads that we've seen happen, that the government has been focused on? Is this changing the lives of people? Is this something that they welcome?
Look, these development stories we've been hearing for a long time. I mean, for many, many years. It's not something new. The development came even during Bakshi's time. I think that was the maximum development. Did it change people's heart? It didn't. Somewhere down the line, there was a problem which was not discussed. And in the 60s, the first signs of rebellion started. And then thereafter, of course, finally, it did come. It came in 90s. We've been hearing of development even in the last 1 decade. We've been hearing of development since 2019, even more, when it didn't even exist. I mean, you see the roads of Srinagar today, which is the capital city. You will see paintings on the walls and the pillars under the flyover, but you see potholed roads all over. I mean, this is not the kind of development anybody would welcome. And all you're hearing in the Delhi studios, news studios, is that, there is, because Article 370 has gone, now there will be a lot of development. 370 was never a hindrance to development anyway. So there was development has been coming, and off and on there have been phases when a lot of development has been induced in Jammu and Kashmir, and 370 was not a hindrance. And the kind of spin that is now being given, this development has existed only on papers. First of all, there is skepticism that whether this will really translate on the ground. Today, a lot of tourists are coming to Kashmir, but has it changed the reality? In a lot of sections of media, it would be said that tourism is coming, so it's going to benefit the people. Of course, tourism is welcome for people who are connected with tourism. It's not more than 8 to 12% of economy that tourism accounts for. It doesn't impact an entire population. There is much more to Jammu and Kashmir's economy. And just bringing tourists and saying that it's only when people from India will come, and because of their benevolence that you are going to grow now, because of your the benevolence of UAE, whatever expertise that you're going to get some development. I think some amount of agency that the Kashmiris, the local population, in fact, not just Kashmiris, I mean, people of Jammu and Kashmir today are not very happy with what has happened. Of course, in Kashmir, the level of extent is much, discontent is much higher. They need, their agency needs to be recognized. They need to be made a part and parcel of what is going on. They're not treated as stakeholders. They're just spectacles and being told that this is what we are doing for you in a very patronizing manner. I mean, the very first important element of democracy is the involvement of people. Where is the involvement of people? You just don't have a political space. I mean, today, these killings that have shocked everybody. And why is it? I mean, of course, there have been widespread condemnations even in the valley. And people are coming out on the social media. They are coming out with statements, including politicians are doing it. But they're not coming out on the streets to do it. There is so much of threat perception. There is so much of fear. There is so much of bitterness, which disallows them to exhibit their angst, anger in any possible way.
Bhasin, thank you so much for joining me here on this channel and having this conversation with us. I do hope we can talk again. Grim situation in Kashmir, causing a lot of people who were in Kashmir to work, who've been in Kashmir, we understand, to work for several decades, now leaving and heading back to their home states because they believe that it is unsafe. News will be up at 9 o'clock this evening. Do take a look at it. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.